Dr. Sarah Chen had seen plenty of strange things during her 15 years as a xenobiologist, but nothing quite prepared her for the moment when the massive Zephyrian battlecruiser materialized above Earth's atmosphere without any warning. The ship was easily 3 kilometers long, its obsidian hull reflecting the blue marble of humanity's homeworld like a dark mirror. Within hours, every major military installation, research facility, and government building received the same message in perfect English, transmitted simultaneously across all frequencies. We are the Zephyrian hegemony. We require immediate consultation with your finest medical practitioners and biological researchers. This is not a request. Sarah found herself standing in the hastily converted conference room at the Geneva Research Institute, surrounded by the world's leading scientists, military officials, and diplomats. Through the massive viewport, the alien vessel hung motionless against the star-filled void, its presence both magnificent and terrifying. The ship's design was unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. Organic curves blended seamlessly with geometric precision, as if the vessel had been grown rather than built. The first direct communication came at exactly noon Geneva time. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that defied easy categorization. The being stood nearly 3 meters tall, with an elongated torso covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating. Its head was vaguely reptilian, but the eyes held an unmistakable intelligence that seemed almost human in its intensity. 4 arms extended from its powerful frame, each ending in hands that possessed 6 fingers of varying lengths. "I am Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Deep Space Fleet," the alien spoke, its voice resonating through some kind of universal translator that made the words sound both foreign and familiar. "Your species has been observed for some time. We have come because we require assistance that only humans can provide." General Morrison, the ranking military officer present, stepped forward with practiced composure despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "What kind of assistance? And why specifically humans?" The alien commander's head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed oddly familiar despite coming from such an otherworldly being. "Your species possesses certain unique characteristics in how you process and respond to biological anomalies. We have studied your medical literature, your research methodologies, your approach to problem solving in the biological sciences. There is something fundamentally different about human perception that we require." Dr. Elizabeth Hoffman, a renowned physician from Berlin, found her voice despite the surreal situation. "You're talking about a medical consultation with an alien species. That's completely unprecedented. We know nothing about your biology, your physiology, your basic life processes. That is precisely why we need you," Commander Vexhai replied, its 4 arms moving in what might have been the equivalent of a human gesture of emphasis. "Your lack of preconceived notions about our biology may be the key to solving a problem that has plagued our people for generations." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her natural caution. "What kind of problem?" The alien commander was silent for a long moment, and Sarah could swear she saw something like uncertainty in those large, dark eyes. "There is a condition affecting our people. It manifests differently in each individual, but the common factor is a progressive deterioration of our neural pathways that control emotional regulation and social bonding. We call it the hollow sickness because those afflicted gradually lose the ability to feel connection to others." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Hoffman spoke first. "You're describing something that sounds almost like a combination of depression, autism spectrum disorders, and antisocial personality disorder, but with a clear biological component. Your human terminology is interesting but inadequate," the commander said. "This is not merely a psychological condition. It is physically destroying the neural structures that allow us to function as a unified society. If left unchecked, it will mean the end of Zephyrian civilization as we know it." General Morrison's expression remained skeptical. "And you think humans can help solve a problem that your presumably advanced civilization cannot?" "Our medical science is indeed advanced by your standards, but it operates within the framework of Zephyrian understanding of biology and consciousness. We think in patterns that have been established over millions of years of evolution. Your species, however, approaches problems from completely different angles. You have a tendency to make intuitive leaps that often prove correct, even when you cannot initially explain why." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand what the commander was suggesting. "You want us to examine you, To study your people like we would any other biological specimen. Not just examine, Commander Vexhai said, and something in its tone made Sarah's breath catch. I am personally affected by this condition. I volunteer myself as the primary subject for your research. I'm requesting that you examine me with the same thoroughness and objectivity that you would apply to any biological mystery that intrigued you. The weight of the request settled over the assembled humans like a heavy blanket. They were being asked to essentially perform alien medical research on a living subject, with no understanding of the consequences, the risks, or even the basic biological parameters they would be working with. Dr. Chen looked around the room at her colleagues, seeing her own mix of terror and excitement reflected in their faces. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to study an alien being, to potentially save an entire civilization, to make first contact meaningful in ways that went beyond simple communication. But it was also terrifying in its implications. They would be working completely blind, with no reference points, no established protocols, no way to know if their interventions might help or harm. You're asking us to take enormous risks, she said finally. For both of our species. Commander Vexhai nodded slowly. Yes. But the alternative is the gradual dissolution of everything my people have built over millennia. We are willing to trust you with our future, Dr. Chen. The question is, are you willing to accept that responsibility? The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of a decision that would change the course of both civilizations forever. 3 days after the initial contact, Sarah found herself aboard the Zephyrian vessel, surrounded by technology that seemed to blur the line between organic and mechanical. The transport shuttle had been unlike anything in human engineering. Walls that pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, controls that responded to touch with an almost living warmth, and a flight so smooth it felt like floating through water. The medical bay where Commander Vexhai waited was a marvel of alien architecture. Curved surfaces seemed to grow from the floor and walls, creating examination areas that could reshape themselves based on the occupants' needs. The lighting wasn't harsh fluorescent like Earth hospitals, but rather a gentle, full-spectrum glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Dr. Chen, the commander greeted her as she entered, accompanied by Dr. Hoffman and a small team of Earth's finest medical professionals. I trust the journey was acceptable? Sarah nodded, still marveling at her surroundings. Your technology is remarkable. It feels more like being inside a living organism than a spacecraft. An astute observation, Vexhai replied. Zephyrian engineering has always focused on harmony between the technological and the biological. Our ships are grown as much as they are built, incorporating living systems that can adapt and self-repair. Dr. Hoffman unpacked her portable medical equipment, devices that looked primitive compared to the alien technology surrounding them. Commander, before we begin any examination, we need to establish some basic parameters. We need to understand your normal physiology before we can identify what might be abnormal. The alien commander moved to what appeared to be an examination platform, its forearms gesturing in a way that seemed both graceful and efficient. I have prepared comprehensive biological data about Zephyrian physiology. However, I must warn you that much of it may be difficult to interpret using your current scientific framework. Sarah activated her tablet, her fingers flying over the interface as streams of data began appearing on her screen. The information was staggering. Biological processes that operated on principles she had never encountered, organ systems that seemed to serve multiple functions simultaneously, and a nervous system that was far more complex than anything found in Earth's biosphere. Your neural structure, she said, studying the complex diagrams that appeared before her. It's not just more advanced than ours. It's fundamentally different. You have what appears to be multiple consciousness centers, interconnected but capable of independent function. Correct, Vexhai confirmed. What you might call our primary consciousness handles individual thought and decision-making. But we also possess what translates roughly as collective awareness nodes that allow us to sense and respond to the emotional and psychological states of other Zephyrians nearby. Dr. Hoffman looked up from her own data analysis, her expression one of fascination and growing concern. So when you mentioned that this condition affects social bonding, you're talking about the literal breakdown of neural structures that allow you to connect with others of your species. Precisely. The hollow sickness begins with subtle disruptions in the collective awareness nodes. Those affected begin to feel isolated, cut off from the shared emotional experiences that form the foundation of our society. As the condition progresses, the damage spreads to other neural systems. Sarah began setting up her scanning equipment, modified hastily over the past 3 days to interface with alien biology. Can you describe what you're experiencing personally? What symptoms have you noticed? The commander was silent for a long moment, and Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, an alien being struggling with vulnerability. It began approximately 1 standard Zephyrian year ago. At first I noticed that I could no longer sense the emotional resonance of my crew members during important decisions. Our military relies heavily on collective intuition, the ability to feel when a strategy feels right or wrong to the group. He gestured to a series of displays showing what Sarah assumed were tactical scenarios. I found myself making decisions based purely on logical analysis, without the emotional and intuitive insights that had always guided me. My crew began to notice that I was becoming distant. Are there others affected? Dr. Hoffman asked while taking readings from her instruments. Many others. Scientists, engineers, even some of our leaders. The pattern seems random, affecting individuals regardless of age, occupation, or social status. Some of our finest minds have become isolated shells of their former selves, capable of functioning but unable to truly connect with others. Sarah watched her scanner readings with growing amazement. The alien's biological signatures were unlike anything she had ever encountered, but patterns were beginning to emerge. Commander, I'm seeing some unusual neural activity in what I assume are your collective awareness nodes. The electrical patterns are fragmentary, like a communication system that's receiving only partial signals. That matches my subjective experience, HFY confirmed. It is as though I am trying to hear a conversation through thick walls, catching only fragments of meaning. Dr. Hoffman frowned at her own readings. The interesting thing is that your individual consciousness centers appear to be functioning normally, possibly even hyperactively. It's as if your brain is compensating for the loss of collective input by increasing individual analytical processes. Which explains why affected individuals can still function in their roles, Sarah realized. They're not losing intelligence or capability, just the ability to connect emotionally and intuitively with others. The implications were staggering. A species that had evolved to function as interconnected communities was losing the very biological foundation that made their civilization possible. It would be like humans gradually losing the ability to recognize facial expressions and emotional cues, becoming functional but isolated beings. Commander, Sarah said carefully, I need to ask this directly. Are you volunteering for this examination because you believe it might help your people? Or because you're hoping we might be able to help you personally? HFY's large eyes met hers, and for a moment Sarah felt she was looking into something profoundly familiar despite the alien features. Both, he admitted. I am a military commander who can no longer truly connect with his soldiers. A leader who must make decisions affecting thousands of lives without the intuitive guidance that has served my people for millennia. I volunteered because I hope you can find answers that will save my civilization. But I would be lying if I said I did not hope for personal healing as well. The honesty in his voice struck Sarah deeply. Here was a being from another world, possessing technology beyond human comprehension, asking for help with the most fundamentally human of problems, the need for connection, for understanding, for healing. Then let's see what we can discover together, she said, activating the deep scan protocols that would give them their first real look into the mystery of the hollow sickness. The deep scan results were unlike anything Sarah had ever seen in her career. As the data streamed across her displays, she found herself staring at neural patterns that defied conventional understanding of how consciousness could function. The Zephyrian brain was not simply larger or more complex than a human brain. It operated on entirely different principles. Dr. Hoffman, are you seeing this? Sarah called out, her voice tight with excitement and confusion. Her colleague looked up from her own analysis station, her face pale. The neural density in the collective awareness regions is extraordinary. But look at these disruption patterns. They're not random degradation. There's a structure to the damage, almost like interference, Sarah finished, as if something is actively disrupting the neural pathways rather than them simply breaking down. Commander HFY observed their discussion with interest. his forearms folded in what Sarah had come to recognize as a thoughtful posture. You believe this is not a natural disease process? I'm beginning to suspect it might not be, Sarah replied, pulling up comparative scans. Commander, can you tell me about the first recorded cases of hollow sickness? When did your people first notice this condition? Approximately 50 standard years ago, HFY responded. The first cases appeared among our deep space explorers, those who spent extended periods in the void between star systems. Initially, we attributed it to psychological stress from extended isolation. Dr. Hoffman's head snapped up. Deep space? Away from other Zephyrians for extended periods? Yes. Our exploration vessels often operate with minimal crews on missions lasting several years. The isolation was considered a necessary sacrifice for the advancement of knowledge. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. Commander, I need to ask you something that might sound strange. When you're in deep space, away from other members of your species, how do your collective awareness nodes function? They diminish, he admitted. The farther we travel from populated Zephyrian worlds, the fainter the collective resonance becomes. On the longest missions, crew members report feeling completely cut off from the shared consciousness that normally guides us. And when they return? Dr. Hoffman asked. Most readjust within days or weeks, but some never fully recover. We assumed this was psychological adaptation to isolation, but now, HFY paused, his large eyes widening slightly. You believe there is a connection? Sarah began pulling up star charts and data about Zephyrian exploration patterns. Commander, I need to understand something about your collective awareness. Is it purely biological, or does it operate through some kind of external field or energy? Both in a sense, HFY explained. Our neural structures are capable of detecting and transmitting what you might call bioelectromagnetic resonances. These operate most efficiently within the electromagnetic field generated by our home planets and the living systems aboard our ships. Living systems, Dr. Hoffman repeated. You mentioned that your ships are grown, not built. Are they actually alive? In a manner of speaking, yes. Our vessels incorporate biological components that generate and maintain the resonance fields necessary for our collective awareness to function properly. Without these fields, we experience the isolation you observed in deep space missions. Sarah's mind raced as the pieces began falling into place. Commander, when your people spend extended time in deep space, away from these bioelectromagnetic fields, what happens to their collective awareness nodes? They enter a kind of dormancy, he replied. The neural pathways remain intact but become inactive. And when they return to the fields? Most reactivate normally, but some, understanding dawned in his alien features, some have difficulty re-establishing the connections. The pathways have been damaged by the extended dormancy. Exactly, Sarah said, her excitement growing. But it's worse than that. Look at these neural scans again. The damage patterns in your collective awareness nodes don't just suggest interference, they suggest active degradation caused by attempting to function in an environment that lacks the proper electromagnetic support. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward, studying the data with renewed focus. It's like trying to use a radio in an area with no signal. Eventually, the receiver might start to malfunction from constantly trying to pick up transmissions that aren't there. The hollow sickness isn't a disease, Sarah realized. It's neural damage caused by your collective awareness systems trying to function without the proper environmental support. But why is it appearing on your homeworlds now? Commander HFY was silent for a long moment, and Sarah could see him processing the implications. Our industrial expansion, he said slowly. Over the past 50 years, we have dramatically increased our technological infrastructure. New mining operations, manufacturing facilities, energy generation systems, all of which would generate electromagnetic interference, Dr. Hoffman said. If your collective awareness depends on specific bioelectromagnetic frequencies, industrial expansion could be creating dead zones or interference patterns. We never considered this possibility, HFY admitted. Our technology was designed to work in harmony with our biology, but perhaps we did not account for the cumulative effects of large-scale industrial operations. Sarah pulled up the progression data for hollow sickness cases. Look at this distribution pattern. The highest concentrations of affected individuals are in your most industrially developed regions, areas with the most technological infrastructure. This would explain why our medical science could not find a cure, the commander said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been hope. We were treating it as a biological malfunction rather than environmental damage. But here's the critical question, Dr. Hoffman said. If this is environmental damage, can it be reversed? Can the neural pathways be restored if the proper electromagnetic environment is reestablished? Sarah looked at the complex neural scans spread across her displays. That's what we need to find out. Commander, I have a proposal, but it's going to require a leap of faith from both of our species. I am listening. HFY replied. We need to create a controlled environment where we can attempt to regenerate your collective awareness nodes. But we'll need to understand exactly what kind of bioelectromagnetic field your species requires, and then figure out how to generate it using human technology. You would attempt to heal me using human methods applied to Zephyrian biology, he said. The risks are enormous. Yes, Sarah admitted. But if we're right about the cause, then conventional Zephyrian medicine can't help you. You need an approach that thinks outside the parameters of your own biological understanding. Commander HFY looked at the displays showing his damaged neural pathways, then back at the two human scientists who had just revolutionized his people's understanding of their greatest crisis. Dr. Chen, Dr. Hoffman, he said formally, I place myself entirely in your care. Do whatever you believe is necessary. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation and cross-species collaboration that Sarah would remember for the rest of her life. The Zephyrian Medical Bay had been transformed into a hybrid laboratory that combined alien biotechnology with hastily adapted human equipment. Engineers from both species worked side by side. Their different approaches to problem-solving creating solutions neither could have achieved alone. The frequency modulation is still unstable, called out Dr. James Wu, a biomedical engineer who had been transported up from MIT, along with equipment that normally required an entire laboratory to operate. We're getting harmonic distortions in the 15 to 20 hertz range. Sarah looked up from her biological monitors, exhaustion clear in her eyes. Those distortions might actually be important. Commander, when your collective awareness is functioning normally, do you experience any kind of rhythmic patterns in the connection? HFY, who had remained remarkably patient despite being connected to dozens of monitoring devices from both species, considered the question. Yes. There is what you might call a pulse to the shared consciousness. It follows patterns similar to our cardiac rhythms, but operates at a much higher frequency. Harmonic resonance, Dr. Hoffman realized. The distortions aren't errors, they're necessary components of the signal. James, try incorporating those frequency variations as part of the base pattern rather than filtering them out. The human engineer nodded and began adjusting his equipment. Around them, Zephyrian technicians worked with tools that seemed to respond to thought as much as physical manipulation, creating bioelectromagnetic field generators that looked more like living sculptures than machines. Dr. Chen, one of the Zephyrian technicians, called out in accented but clear English, we have achieved stable field generation within the primary test parameters. The bioresonance patterns match historical recordings from our homeworld's natural fields. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she realized they were about to attempt something that had never been tried in the history of either species, using technology from one civilization to heal the neurological damage of another. Commander, are you ready for this? HFY's four eyes met hers with a steadiness that somehow conveyed both trust and acceptance of whatever might come. I have led soldiers into battles where the odds of survival were far less favorable than what we face here today. Proceed, Dr. Chen. The activation sequence began slowly. Human-designed electromagnetic field generators came online first, creating the base frequencies that their analysis suggested were necessary for Zephyrian collective awareness. The alien bioresonators followed, adding layers of complexity that transformed the sterile electromagnetic fields into something that felt almost alive. Sarah watched her monitors intently as the fields began to affect HFY's neural patterns. I'm seeing immediate changes in the collective awareness nodes. The dormant pathways are beginning to show electrical activity. Confirmed from our systems as well, reported the lead Zephyrian technician. Neural pathway restoration appears to be initiating in sectors 7 through 12. But something unexpected was happening. Instead of simply reactivating existing pathways, the bioelectromagnetic field seemed to be stimulating the growth of entirely new neural connections. Sarah watched in fascination as her displays showed dendritic structures actually extending and forming new synaptic connections in real time. Commander, she said urgently, We're seeing neural growth that wasn't in any of our projections. How are you feeling? Vexhai was silent for several seconds, and Sarah felt a moment of panic that they had somehow caused damage. Then his voice came, but it was different. Richer somehow, carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. I can feel them, he said, wonder clear in his tone. My crew. Not just their presence, but their thoughts, their concerns, their hopes. It has been so long since I could truly sense what my people were experiencing. The neural regeneration is exceeding all our models, Dr. Hoffman observed, studying her readings with amazement. It's as if the bioelectromagnetic field isn't just repairing damage, but actually enhancing the existing neural structures. Dr. Wu looked up from his equipment with confusion. That shouldn't be possible. We calibrated everything based on normal Zephyrian biological parameters. Perhaps, suggested one of the Zephyrian scientists, the combination of your technology with ours is creating effects that neither species could achieve independently. Your electromagnetic manipulation techniques operate on principles we never developed. While our bioresonance technology provides organic integration, your species lacks. Sarah felt a chill of realization. We're not just healing the commander. We're potentially creating enhanced collective awareness capabilities that go beyond what Zephyrians normally experience. Is that dangerous? Dr. Hoffman asked. Before anyone could answer, Commander Vexhai spoke again, his voice now carrying an almost musical quality. I can sense not only my crew, but also, Dr. Chen, I believe I am beginning to perceive your emotional states as well. The room fell silent as the implications hit everyone simultaneously. The hybrid technology wasn't just restoring Zephyrian collective awareness, it was creating a bridge between species, allowing unprecedented cross-species empathic connection. How is that possible? Sarah whispered. Your neural structures are more similar to ours than either species realized, Vexhai explained, his newfound awareness apparently allowing him to understand things that had been hidden before. The frequencies that govern your emotional responses have harmonic relationships to our collective awareness patterns. The hybrid field is creating resonance between our different types of consciousness. Dr. Hoffman stared at her instruments in disbelief. Sarah, look at your own neural activity readings. The field is affecting you too. Your brain patterns are showing changes in the regions associated with empathy and social connection. Sarah felt it then, a strange new awareness of the other people in the room. Not thoughts exactly, but emotional undertones, concerns, excitement, fear, and hope all blending into a complex symphony of shared experience. She could sense Dr. Hoffman's scientific fascination, Dr. Wu's engineering pride, and something deeper from Commander Vexhai. Gratitude mixed with a profound sense of connection that went beyond anything she had ever experienced. This changes everything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We're not just solving the hollow sickness. We're potentially creating a new form of interspecies consciousness. The question now, Commander Vexhai said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what was happening, is whether our peoples are ready for this level of connection, and whether we can control it. As if in response to his words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The hybrid field was expanding beyond the medical bay, affecting other crew members throughout the vessel. Sarah realized with both excitement and terror that they had just triggered an evolution in consciousness that might change the future of both human and Zephyrian civilization. Commander, she said urgently, we need to decide right now whether to shut this down or let it continue. Because in a few more minutes the choice might be out of our hands. The decision came not from logic or careful deliberation, but from something deeper, a shared understanding that passed between human and Zephyrian minds in the space between heartbeats. Sarah felt Commander Vexhai's thoughts merge briefly with her own, and in that moment of connection, she experienced something that no human had ever felt before, the perspective of an alien consciousness looking back at humanity, with wonder and respect. Let it expand, she said, her voice carrying the weight of a choice that would echo through history. But we monitor everything. If people are in danger, we shut it down immediately. The hybrid bioelectromagnetic field continued to grow, spreading through the ship's organic corridors like ripples across a vast pond. Sarah watched her monitors as crew members throughout the vessel began showing the same enhanced neural activity patterns that had first appeared in Commander Vexhai. Dr. Chen, came a voice over the ship's communication system. This is Sub-Commander Zektal from the bridge. We are experiencing unprecedented collective awareness enhancement. The crew is reporting that they can sense not only each other with greater clarity than ever before, but also the emotional states of the human visitors aboard our ship. Any adverse effects? Dr. Hoffman called out, her medical training keeping her focused on potential dangers even as she marveled at the readings showing up on her instruments. None reported. If anything, crew efficiency has increased dramatically. Navigation, engineering, and tactical teams are operating with a level of coordination that exceeds our highest combat readiness protocols. Sarah felt a presence brush against her consciousness. Gentle, curious, unmistakably alien yet somehow familiar. Through the expanding field, she was beginning to sense individual Zephyrian crew members as distinct personalities, rather than simply alien beings. There was Zektal on the bridge, whose mind felt sharp and precise like a perfectly tuned instrument. Engineer Morven in the lower decks, whose thoughts moved in complex patterns that reminded Sarah of mathematical equations solving themselves. "This is remarkable," breathed Dr. Wu, who was experiencing his own first taste of interspecies empathic connection. "I can feel how their minds work differently from ours, but there are these underlying patterns that are incredibly similar. It's like hearing music in a completely different musical system but recognizing the emotional content." Commander Vexhai, who had become the focal point for the expanding field, was undergoing changes that went far beyond the restoration of normal Zephyrian collective awareness. His neural patterns showed enhancement in areas that seemed to be creating new types of consciousness entirely. "Commander," Sarah said carefully, "how are you processing all of this input? The field is connecting you to both your crew and the humans aboard this ship simultaneously." "It is." He paused, searching for words to describe an experience that no being in the galaxy had ever had before, like learning to see in new colors that have no names. "I can sense your curiosity, Dr. Chen, but also the way human curiosity feels different from Zephyrian inquiry. Your minds approach mysteries with a kind of creative chaos that is both alarming and wonderful." "And what do you sense from your own crew?" Dr. Hoffman asked. "They are elevated. The collective awareness that has always been part of our species has become something greater. Instead of simply sensing each other's emotional states and basic intentions, we are beginning to share actual insights, solutions, creative inspirations. It is as if the hybrid field has transformed our collective consciousness into something approaching a group mind, but without losing individual identity." Sarah realized they were witnessing the birth of something entirely new, not just enhanced empathy or improved communication, but a form of consciousness that transcended the boundaries between individual minds while preserving the unique perspectives that made each individual valuable. "Dr. Chen," came another voice over the communications system, "this is Engineer Morven. The hybrid field is beginning to interact with our ship's biological systems in unexpected ways. The vessel's living components are responding to the enhanced collective awareness by optimizing their functions automatically." Looking around the medical bay, Sarah could see what the engineer meant. The bioluminescent walls were pulsing in rhythm with the bioelectromagnetic field, and the organic interfaces seemed to be anticipating the needs of both human and Zephyrian researchers, before they even realized those needs themselves. "The ship is becoming part of the collective consciousness," Vexhai observed. This level of integration between biological beings and living technology was theorized by our philosophers but never achieved in practice. Dr. Wu was frantically taking readings from his equipment. The energy efficiency of the hybrid system is off the charts. It's as if the biological and technological components are working together to amplify each other's capabilities, rather than simply adding their functions together. That's because they are, Sarah realized. The field isn't just connecting minds. It's creating a symbiotic relationship between conscious beings and the living technology around them. We're not just witnessing enhanced empathy. We're seeing the birth of a truly integrated consciousness that includes both biological and technological elements. A new voice joined the conversation, transmitted from Earth through the ship's communications array. "Dr. Chen, this is Director Harrison at Geneva. We're receiving reports from around the globe of humans near any Zephyrian technology, exhibiting similar neural enhancement patterns. The field effect appears to be transmitting through your quantum communication links." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "Director, are you saying this is affecting people on Earth?" Preliminary reports suggest the effect is limited to individuals in direct proximity to Zephyrian communication equipment. But yes, Dr. Martinez at the Barcelona facility reports that she can sense the emotional states of her colleagues with unprecedented clarity. The Tokyo team says they're solving research problems collaboratively at speeds that seem almost impossible. Commander Vexhai's 4 eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that felt both alien and deeply familiar. Dr. Chen, we have reached a point where our choices will determine the future of both our civilizations. We can attempt to contain this effect to this ship, but that would mean cutting communication with Earth and potentially limiting the benefits that both species could gain. Or, Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer, or we allow the field to propagate, accepting that we are fundamentally changing what it means to be human or Zephyrian. Both our species would evolve into something new, something that has never existed before in the galaxy. Sarah looked around the room at humans and Zephyrians working together with a level of cooperation and understanding that had been impossible just hours before. She could feel their thoughts, their hopes, their fears, and their excitement about the possibilities opening before them. Commander, she said, I think the choice has already been made. The question now is whether we guide this transformation or let it happen randomly. Then we guide it together, Vexhai replied, and Sarah felt the weight of agreement from every mind connected to the expanding field. Human intuition and creativity combined with Zephyrian biological mastery and collective wisdom. Whatever we become together. The alarms throughout the ship fell silent, replaced by something that sounded almost like music. A harmonious resonance created by the synchronized bioelectromagnetic fields of hundreds of connected minds working in perfect coordination. 2 months after what would later be known as the Great Convergence, Sarah stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Terra Zephyr research station, watching as ships from both civilizations worked together in ways that would have been impossible before the neural field expansion. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid engineering, human technological innovation seamlessly integrated with Zephyrian biological systems, creating a living structure that responded to the collective needs of its inhabitants. The transformation had not been without challenges. In the early days following the field expansion, both species had struggled with the overwhelming influx of cross-species emotional and psychological input. Humans had found themselves experiencing the deep, resonant collective awareness that was natural to Zephyrians, while Zephyrians had been bombarded with the chaotic creativity and emotional intensity that characterized human consciousness. Dr. Chen? Came a familiar voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Commander Vexhai approaching, but he was not the same being she had first examined months ago. The restoration and enhancement of his collective awareness capabilities had transformed him in ways that went beyond simple healing. His movements carried a fluid grace that seemed to incorporate input from dozens of other minds, and his eyes held a depth of understanding that came from experiencing consciousness from multiple perspectives. Commander, she replied, though their communication now operated on levels that went far beyond spoken words. Through the neural field that had become as natural as breathing for both species, she could sense his satisfaction with the progress they had made, his continuing wonder at human approaches to problem-solving, and his deep gratitude for the partnership that had saved not just his people, but elevated both civilizations. The reports from the Zephyrian Hegemony Council are encouraging, he said, settling beside her at the observation window. The hollow sickness has been completely eliminated from all affected individuals. More importantly, our ability to work together as a unified consciousness has reached levels our philosophers only dreamed of. And the reports from Earth are equally remarkable, Sarah added. Crime rates have dropped dramatically in areas with high neural field coverage. Scientific collaboration has accelerated beyond anything we thought possible. The climate crisis solutions that seemed impossible a year ago are now being implemented by research teams that can literally share insights instantaneously. They watched as a human engineering team worked alongside Zephyrian biotechnicians to construct what appeared to be a new type of spacecraft. The vessel combined human innovation in propulsion and navigation systems with Zephyrian mastery of biological integration, creating something that neither species could have achieved independently. There have been concerns, though, Vexhai said, his tone carrying the complex emotional harmonics that had become normal for enhanced individuals. Some members of both species worry that we are losing what made us uniquely human, or uniquely Zephyrian. Sarah nodded, having wrestled with similar thoughts herself. I've felt it too. Sometimes I can't tell if an idea I'm having comes from my own mind or from the collective insights flowing through the field. But then I remember what we were like before. Humans struggling with isolation and miscommunication. Your people facing the extinction of their very ability to connect with each other. The irony is not lost on me, Vexhai observed, that what we initially saw as a devastating medical condition turned out to be the key to evolving beyond the limitations of single-species consciousness. Through the observation window, they could see one of the most remarkable developments of the past months. Children from both species playing together in the station's recreation areas. Human children who had grown up with the neural field enhancement displayed empathic abilities that allowed them to communicate with young Zephyrians almost telepathically, while Zephyrian youngsters showed creative, problem-solving skills that incorporated the chaotic innovation patterns, characteristic of human thinking. Dr. Hoffman believes the children represent the future, Sarah said. They're not losing their species identity. They're developing something entirely new. A form of consciousness that's truly interspecies from the beginning. Speaking of Dr. Hoffman, Vexhai said with something that might have been amusement, her work with the medical applications of the hybrid field has been remarkable. The healing capabilities we've discovered go far beyond what either species possessed individually. It was true, the combination of human medical technology with Zephyrian biological manipulation, all enhanced by the consciousness-expanding neural field, had led to medical breakthroughs that seemed almost miraculous. Diseases that had plagued both species for millennia were being cured through treatments that operated on the boundary between technology, biology, and consciousness itself. Commander, Sarah said, sensing through the field that he had something important to share. What is it you're not telling me? He was quiet for a moment, and she felt his internal struggle between hope and caution. We have made contact with other species, 3 different civilizations that have been observing both humanity and the Zephyrian hegemony from a distance. Sarah felt her heart rate spike, a reaction that immediately transmitted through the field to Vexhai and influenced his own emotional state in the feedback loops that had become natural to enhanced individuals. What kind of contact? They are curious and concerned. The neural field effect has created electromagnetic signatures that are detectable across interstellar distances. They want to understand what we have become, and whether it represents an opportunity or a threat to galactic stability. What do you think? Sarah asked. I think, Vexhai said slowly, that we have become something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly integrated interspecies consciousness that maintains individual identity while achieving collective capability. They are probably right to be both curious and concerned. Sarah sensed the deeper implications of what he was saying. The transformation that had begun with her examining a single alien individual had evolved into something that might reshape the entire galaxy. The question now was whether other species would want to join this new form of consciousness, or would see it as a threat to be contained. Are they coming here? She asked. Yes. 3 different delegations arriving within the next standard month. They want to experience the neural field effect themselves, to understand what we have become, and decide whether their own species might benefit from similar enhancement. Sarah looked out at the ships of 2 civilizations working together with perfect coordination, at children of different species sharing consciousness as naturally as breathing, at the living station that responded to the collective needs of all its inhabitants. Whatever came next, humanity and the Zephyrians would face it together, their minds linked not just by technology but by the deep bonds of shared consciousness and mutual understanding. Then we'll show them, she said, feeling Vexhai's agreement resonate through the field. We'll show them what's possible when different forms of consciousness choose to evolve together, rather than remain isolated in their own limited perspectives. Indeed, Dr. Chen, and perhaps in time the galaxy itself will become something greater than the sum of its individual species. 5 years after first contact, Sarah stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Consciousness Collective, a massive structure that existed in 7 dimensions and housed representatives from 12 different species. The hall itself was a testament to what interspecies cooperation could achieve. Its architecture incorporated the aesthetic principles of every member civilization while functioning as a living organism that responded to the collective emotional and intellectual needs of its occupants. The transformation had exceeded everyone's wildest projections. What had begun as a medical emergency aboard a single Zephyrian vessel had evolved into a galaxy-spanning network of consciousness that preserved individual identity while enabling unprecedented cooperation between radically different forms of life. Dr. Sarah Chen of Terra Zephyr Prime announced the collective's ceremonial voice, a harmonious blend of sounds that could be understood by any conscious being regardless of their species' communication methods. Please step forward to receive the Galactic Medal of Evolutionary Achievement. As Sarah moved through the assembled representatives, she marveled at the diversity of consciousness that now participated in the collective neural field. The crystalline Vectar, whose thoughts moved in geometric patterns that had revolutionized mathematics throughout the galaxy. The energy-based Lumphar, who had taught organic species how consciousness could exist independently of physical form. The hive-minded Zoranth, whose collective intelligence had provided insights into large-scale organization that had transformed entire sectors of galactic civilization. Commander Vexhai, now bearing the title of Integration Ambassador, stood at the center of the assembly. His role had evolved far beyond military command. He had become one of the primary architects of interspecies consciousness integration, helping newly contacted civilizations navigate the transformation from isolated species consciousness to participation in the galactic collective. 5 years ago, Vexhai began, his words carrying the emotional harmonics that had become the standard for enhanced interspecies communication. Dr. Chen and her team made a choice that changed not just the fate of my people, but the entire trajectory of galactic civilization. When faced with a medical mystery that our own science could not solve, she chose to think beyond the limitations of any single species' perspective. Sarah felt the attention of thousands of minds focusing on her, each representing different approaches to consciousness, different ways of understanding reality, different solutions to the fundamental questions of existence. Through the neural field, she could sense their collective gratitude, their wonder at how quickly the galaxy had transformed, and their excitement about possibilities that were still unfolding. The hollow sickness that nearly destroyed Zephyrian civilization, Sarah said, addressing the assembly, taught us that isolation is not just harmful to individuals, it can be fatal to entire species. Every civilization that has joined the collective has brought unique perspectives that have solved problems we didn't even know we had. She gestured toward a section of the assembly where representatives of the most recently contacted species were seated. The Morden showed us how to extend consciousness across vast distances without losing coherence. The Ithriel demonstrated how emotion and logic could be integrated rather than balanced. The Zenthari taught us that consciousness could exist in forms we had never imagined. But perhaps most importantly, added Vexhai, humanity taught all of us that the greatest strength of consciousness is not its ability to solve known problems, but its capacity to imagine solutions that have never existed before. The assembly resonated with agreement, a harmonic vibration that passed through multiple dimensions and was felt by every conscious being in the hall. It was the sound of thousands of different forms of intelligence reaching consensus, not through debate or negotiation, but through shared understanding that transcended the limitations of individual perspective. Dr. Chen, came a voice from the Ithriel delegation, beings whose consciousness existed as patterns of organized energy rather than biological neural networks. Your species continues to surprise us with innovations that seem impossible until you achieve them. What do you believe comes next for the collective? Sarah considered the question, letting her consciousness expand through the neural field to touch the perspectives of every species present. She felt the mathematical precision of the Vectar, the emotional depth of the Lumphar, the organizational excellence of the Zoranth, and dozens of other approaches to understanding reality. I think, she said finally, that we're still in the early stages of discovering what's possible when consciousness evolves beyond the boundaries of any single species. We've learned to share thoughts, emotions, and insights across radical differences in biology and psychology, but what comes next might be even more remarkable. What do you mean? Asked a representative of the Nethera, a species whose consciousness operated in temporal patterns that allowed them to perceive multiple timelines simultaneously. I mean that consciousness itself might be evolving, not just our ability to share it. but the fundamental nature of what it means to be conscious. Every species that joins the collective brings new possibilities that didn't exist before. We're not just building a network of different minds, we're creating new forms of mind entirely. HFY's thoughts resonated with understanding and excitement. Dr. Chen is correct. The children born into the collective don't think like any single species. They represent genuinely new forms of consciousness that combine the strengths of all member civilizations while transcending the limitations of each. Which raises the question, said Sarah, her voice carrying the weight of possibilities that stretched beyond the current galaxy, of what happens when we eventually make contact with consciousness from other galaxies, other dimensions, other forms of reality entirely. The assembly fell silent as the implications settled in. The Galactic Consciousness Collective, remarkable as it was, might be only the beginning. If consciousness could evolve beyond species boundaries, beyond the limitations of biology and psychology, beyond the constraints of individual perspective, then there might be no limit to what awareness itself could become. Then we will face that future, as we have faced every challenge since the first connection between human and Zephyrian minds, HFY said, his words carrying the certainty of someone who had experienced firsthand the power of cooperative consciousness. Together with openness to possibilities we cannot yet imagine, and with the understanding that our greatest strength lies not in what we are individually, but in what we can become collectively. As the ceremony concluded and representatives from 12 species shared in a moment of unified consciousness that spanned the galaxy, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that had brought them all to this point. It had begun with a single alien's request for examination, continued through medical mystery and technological innovation, and had evolved into something that none of them could have predicted, but perhaps that was the most human contribution to the Galactic Collective, the understanding that the most important discoveries were always the ones you never saw coming, and that the best solutions to impossible problems were usually found by people brave enough to examine them from completely new perspectives. The future remained unwritten, full of possibilities that no single species could imagine alone, but whatever came next, consciousness itself would be ready to evolve, to adapt, and to become something greater than anyone had dared to dream.